By sundown, on the 4th of June 1942, Japan has lost 4 fleet carriers and 3,057 men. The battle turns in about 6 minutes in the middle of a morning that had been going Japan's way. You have probably heard those minutes called the most decisive 5 minutes in the history of naval warfare. But the Japanese records say the aircraft everyone pictures ranged on those flight decks was still down in the hangars. 6 months after Pearl Harbor, Yamamoto sends 4 carriers east to take Midway and force the American fleet to fight. Midway is 2 coral islets, 6 kilometers across, 1,300 miles northwest of Oahu, and almost nothing else. Taking it pushes Japan's line east, but the real prize is the 3 American carriers Yamamoto expects to come out and defend it. He also sends a second force north to the Aleutians, splitting a fleet that will end up outnumbered where it matters. The whole plan depends on surprise, but in a basement at Pearl Harbor, Joseph Rochefort's team is already reading Japanese naval traffic. Station Hypo can see an objective the Japanese call AF, but nothing in the traffic says which island AF actually is. So Captain Wilfred Holmes has Midway report over a secure undersea cable that its water distillation plant has broken down. Midway then broadcasts the same complaint, uncoded, in the clear for anybody who happens to be listening. Within 24 hours, Tokyo signals that AF is short of water and Nimitz has his island. He now knows the target and roughly the date, but he has 2 carriers to bring against Yamamoto's 4. Then Yorktown limps in from the Coral Sea with a bomb hole punched clean through 4 of her decks. The yard estimates 2 weeks of repairs, but she is patched up and back at sea in 48 hours. On the 2nd of June, 3 American carriers meet 325 miles northeast of Midway. The rendezvous is called Point Luck, and the position you are looking at is approximate. The records give a bearing and a distance from Midway rather than a fix, and those 2 readings differ by a degree. Yamamoto expects to spring an ambush on a fleet that has no idea he is coming. Instead, he is sailing into one, and he will not find that out for another 2 days. At 4:30, Nagumo launches 108 aircraft from 4 carriers against the island. He holds a second wave below deck, armed with torpedoes in case American warships appear where he is told there are none. 600 miles behind him, Yamamoto follows with the battleships much too far away to influence anything at all. At 5:34, a Catalina flying boat sights the carriers and radios their bearing straight back to Midway. From that moment, the Americans know where Nagumo is, but Nagumo still does not know they are at sea. From 7 o'clock, everything Midway can put in the air goes at him. Marine dive bombers, Avengers, then 15 B-17s. Not one of those attacks scores a hit, but together they keep his flight decks occupied for an hour and a half. At 7:15, Nagumo orders the reserve rearmed with land bombs for a second strike on the island. But at 7:40, a scout float plane from the cruiser Tone reports American ships away to the east. At 8:20, the same scout confirms what is out there, and one of those ships is a carrier. The torpedoes have only just come off those aircraft, and now every one of them has to go back on. Nagumo also has a strike returning from Midway that is low on fuel and has nowhere else to land. He chooses to recover them first, which is the humane decision and also the one that costs him the battle. From 9:20, 3 American torpedo squadrons attack in succession, and not one of them has any fighter escort. Torpedo 8 goes in first with 15 devastators, and all 15 of them are shot into the sea. Of the 30 men who fly with Torpedo 8 that morning, exactly one comes home. Ensign George Gay is pulled out of the water 30 hours later, having watched the rest of the battle from under his seat cushion. Torpedo 6 loses 10 aircraft out of 14. Torpedo 3 loses 10 out of 12, and still nothing hits. 41 torpedo bombers attack the Japanese fleet that morning. 6 of them come back, and no torpedo finds a target. The story you know says their sacrifice dragged the Zeros down to sea level and left the high sky empty. The Japanese records do not support that, but the torpedo squadrons did do something, and it decided the battle. A carrier flight deck can only do one job at a time: launch aircraft or land and rearm them. Nagumo needs roughly 40 minutes of uninterrupted deck to range and launch a strike at the American carriers. From 7:55, the attacks come often enough that he never once gets his 40 minutes. Meanwhile, the submarine Nautilus attacks the Japanese fleet and is driven off by the destroyer Arashi. Arashi then runs northeast at speed to rejoin, and Wade McCluskey, lost and low on fuel, spots her wake and follows it. At 10:22, groups of American dive bombers arrive over the Japanese carriers from different directions, entirely by accident. McCluskey's Enterprise squadrons come down on Kaga and Akagi, and Max Leslie's Yorktown squadron comes down on Soryu. In about 6 minutes, 3 of the 4 Japanese carriers are burning from end to end. So what was actually ranged on those flight decks when the bombs came down? Very nearly nothing. The strike aircraft are still below in the hangars, being rearmed for the 3rd time that morning. That is worse rather than better, because a hangar packed with fueled aircraft and loose bombs is a sealed box. Akagi is hit by a single bomb, and on a morning like that, one bomb turns out to be enough. Soryu sinks at 16:10, Kaga sinks at 19:25, and Akagi is scuttled the following morning. One Japanese carrier is still afloat, and at 11 o'clock, Hiryu launches 18 dive bombers and 6 Zeros. They find Yorktown and hit her 3 times, but her damage control parties have her steaming again inside the hour. So when the second Japanese wave arrives, they take her for an undamaged carrier and attack her all over again. 2 torpedoes hit her port side, and at 3 o'clock, Yorktown is abandoned where she lies. But she refuses to go down, and she stays afloat for 3 more days before the sea finally takes her. At 5 in the afternoon, dive bombers from Enterprise find Hiryu and hit her 4 times. The last Japanese carrier burns through the night and is scuttled by her own escorts on the 5th. On the 6th, the heavy cruiser Mikuma is caught in the open and bombed until she sinks. Yorktown finally rolls over and goes down at 7:01 on the morning of the 7th. Japan loses 4 fleet carriers, 1 heavy cruiser, 248 aircraft, and 3,057 men. America loses 1 carrier, 1 destroyer, about 150 aircraft, and 307 men. That is 3,057 Japanese dead against 307 American in a single day's fighting. Japan attacked to force a decision, and she got one, but it was not the decision she came for. The fleet positions on this map are reconstructed from action reports, and every one of them is approximate. Times are Midway local, and the sources disagree by as much as 40 minutes on when Yorktown was first hit. If I have put a ship in the wrong place, name it in the comments and I will pin the correction. Sources are on screen.